sich und
del lunes, o sea, de la medianoche del lunes al martes. Exactamente. Y a la medianoche de por distancia. Lufthansa y Frankfurt
Alles klar. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. Pleased to have you here. We're now starting our media breakfast. We're trying to do something slightly different this year and have it more informal and with a bit of fun, so you can get to know each other, have a coffee, and have the Secretary General of the ITF and the Secretary of State for Transport of the United Kingdom talk a little bit about the summit. They will be slightly late, so that's good because I can talk a little bit about what's happening today and some speaker changes and so on and so forth. If you're hungry, if you want to see my face in a better way, take your seats here on the round tables. They're for journalists, they're not for anyone else. So you can sit here and enjoy that. And we get going in about 3 or 4 minutes, okay? Thank you.
Have a seat where it's free seating. Free seating, grab a croissant.
Good morning, good morning. I've just been informed that they're not going to be that long as I thought, so, lots of changes going on. Everyone, it's a super pleasure to have you here. Thank you for coming. My name is Michael Claude. I'm the head of communications of ITF. I'll be your help, I hope, support for the work you're doing here, whether you've come from very far or just from around the corner here in Leipzig. Before we get to the heart of this media breakfast, which kicks off the summit, I want to share with you some general information and some help to maybe avoid you having to ask me questions individually, which will be not good for my time, so it's very egoistic of me. But that doesn't mean you can't come and ask me questions, please do. So the first thing to say is very technical. You want to speak with important people and interview them and so on. That's totally okay, that's why you're here. There are a few things I would suggest you do. Practical tip number one, ministers and heads of delegations wear red badges, red. So if you see a red badge, that's a potential target. However, be considerate, be courteous. We have very large number of different cultures here and there are different ways to approach people. I suggest that what you do if you want to ambush someone, to use that word, is to actually approach the liaison officers. Each head of delegation, each minister has a local student who speaks the language, and you can, they wear red ties or red scarves, and you can just approach them and say, you know, which minister is this, you know, is this them? And can you put me in touch with someone who can ask a question? The question whether I can ask a question. That's a very neat way to actually get into contact with someone who may be interesting. A second way to get interviews and to be put in touch with interesting people is my colleague Lauren. Where's Lauren? Is she around? There, that's Lauren. She's exclusively tasked with organizing interviews for you. So if you have interview requests, go to Lauren. She will indicate if she's overloaded, because that easily happens. So don't give her 9 names, or give her 1 or 2 or 3 and see. Prioritize. Don't let her prioritize your interviews. Please do it yourselves. The third tip is the Summit app, which some of you I know have already downloaded. That has the program and program changes, and it also has a networking feature. So you can see actually people who may not be on the speakers list on the program. If you can't find someone on the speakers list, or you can't find someone in the app, but you want to know whether there's a representative of Deutsche Bahn, of some airline, of a certain ministry, ask us, because we have the list of all participants, which because of data protection rules we cannot share, but we can have a look and tell you whether someone's there and put you in touch. So that's that. This is day 1. Day 1 is the day where we kind of set the tone. And there's actually a really nice narrative running through this morning, which is, of course, linked to our theme, which is transport enabling sustainable economies. It's sustainability. The Secretary of State will be coming from a meeting with ZEVTEC, the Zero Emissions Vehicles Transition Council. That is where industry representatives and politicians talk about how we can get electric vehicles on the roads quickly, more quickly. So very practical, and then he'll come here in press conference, and as you will have noticed, we will be launching this publication. And I very much welcome the lead author, Orla McCarthy, and I hear the ministers are coming, so I can tell you all about that. I won't have to tell you all about that, because we have the Minister and the Secretary General here can do that for us. So, do you want to? Something's happening out there. I can play the reporter. They're heading down the hallway, about 20, 25 meters. They're smiling. Yes, I can see them turning the corner. Here we go. Please do come in. Why are they waiting? They're still discussing sustainability policy. Please welcome Secretary of State for Transport of the United Kingdom, Mark Harper MP. They're discussing. Welcome Secretary Harper and Secretary General Yang Tae Kim. Please have a seat. Welcome. I was just explaining where you're coming from, Secretary, namely the ZEVTEC meeting. So we're starting the day with how to bring electric vehicles on the road, and the narrative of the sustainable transport is continuing with this. Just very briefly to say that after this meeting, there will be a ministerial roundtable on climate change, transport and climate change, just next door. That's a closed meeting, but afterwards there will be a press point. You will see a signed press point. And I know that actually a statement is being prepared, has been prepared, a joint statement, so there will be actually a newsworthy announcement. So at noon, 12 o'clock, I recommend you be out there. There are also 2 sessions I want to highlight for you, which are the Decarbonizing Transport session, which is in the theme, and secondly, the Transport Outlook in-depth session, which Ola will lead, which if what you hear here interests you but wasn't going into enough depth, you should definitely visit. And with that, I would like to welcome Secretary of State Mark Harper of the United Kingdom presiding over this summit, and the ITF Secretary General Young Tae Kim. And I hand over the floor to you, Secretary Harper.
Thank you very much indeed, everybody, for coming today. I'm just going to say an introductory words, and then I think hand over to Young Tae Kim to present his report. So big thank you to everyone for coming here. We've just had a meeting of the Zero Emission Vehicle Transition Council, where we've talked with international colleagues about particularly transition on road transport, and I was able to set out what we're doing in the United Kingdom. We've set out our zero emission vehicle mandate, which we're just doing the final consultation on, which sets out ambitious targets to move to all new cars and vans being zero emission by 2035, heavy goods vehicles by 2040, and we talked to a range of colleagues with similar targets around the world, and some of the ambitious targets we're proposing to deliver. So that was a very good discussion, and it's going to roll towards some setting out significant progress at COP28 later in the year. So I think at this point, I think if I hand over to the Secretary General, who's going to present the report, and then I'll say 1 or 2 words after he's presented that.
Thank you very much. I'm just wondering where the music comes from. Is that something that's happening in the room, or is it a phone? Can I ask the... Thank you. Secretary General.
So good morning, everybody, and thanks for joining us this morning. And I hope you enjoy the coffee and the croissant and the companionship around the tables. And this is the opening event of the ITF Summit 2023. And let me start by welcoming Mark Harper, Secretary of State for Transport of the United Kingdom. And the UK has held the presidency of ITF over the past year, and this summit is traditionally the climax of every presidency. And Mark Harper and his team have steered this organization most capably through these tough times. And when the UK took over in May last year, a brutal war had just started, and a war that is still continuing less than 1 kilometer from here. And a war that is shaking foundation of the international peace order. The ITF is, in a small way, part of that international peace order. So we bring people from all backgrounds together to in turn make it easier to bring people together, literally and physically, and that's what transport is about. And empowering people to meet face to face, to get to know each other, to enable mutually beneficial trade. And war does the opposite of that. And over the next 3 days, we want to talk about what transport can do to make the world better. And the prism through which we look at our sector this year is this: how can transport enable sustainable economies? There are many facets to these questions reflected in the RICH Summit program. Sustainable means more than green and clean. It involves question of access, inclusion, participation, and of the distribution of opportunities and costs. Did you know that less than 20% of the world population have ever taken an airplane? Or that 9 out of 10 road deaths occur in less prosperous countries? And economic and social sustainability deserve all our attention. Yet they are nested within a large challenge, that to our natural environment. If we fail to sustain our planet, other things will count for nothing. This is our flagship report, the ITF Transport Outlook, edition 2023, just out today. We publish this flagship publication every 2 years. So last version was from 2021. I'm happy to announce that this is the newest version. And we assess future trends for transport demand and the associated CO2 emissions and what they mean for policymakers. We are proud to have one among the most advanced modeling tools worldwide. And this year, we modeled a policy pathway that looked at where existing policy approaches would get us. And when we looked at where we end up with our efforts under this current ambition scenario, the result is sobering. Transport CO2 emissions in 2050 would be only 3% lower than in 2019. And that is nowhere near where we need to be to keep global warming in check. The strong increase in demand for mobility over the same period swallows up almost all decarbonization successes. The freight activity will double, and passenger travel will increase by almost 80%. So we really need to up our game and break the link between providing mobility and generating greenhouse gases. Only then will transport be the engine of sustainable economies. But can we still do it? Yes, we can. And this report shows how. Because we also modeled what needs to happen, this high ambition scenario assumes additional actions, bold, fast actions, but not infeasible. In this alternative scenario, transport emissions in 2050 would be 80% less than 2019, not 3%. That would set transport on track for reaching the goals of the Paris Climate Agreement. Will it cost? Yes, it will. But staying on our current path will be just as expensive. This outlook also, for the first time, models future investment needs for core transport infrastructure. The result, investing now in core infrastructure for sustainable transport will be cheaper. It will cost about 5% less than what is needed in any case to accommodate higher demand if we continue as it is, if we act now. Of course, the devil is as always in the details, and I can only scratch the surface here. I encourage all of you to attend the Transport Outlook session at 11 o'clock in Hall 2. It will be worth your while. And the project lead, Ola McCarthy, sitting over there, is with us too and available for your questions. But the message from this report and also from this summit, I think, is clear. We must do more. We must do it now. It will cost, but it need not break the bank. Not doing it could break our planet. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Secretary General, for this introduction to the Outlook. Secretary Harper, I know you have some comments on that to make as well. Thank you very much for taking.
Yes, just a couple of things, having had Young Tai present the report. A couple of things from me. First of all, I think it sets out several different scenarios. And actually, the encouraging thing is a lot of countries are focusing on policy measures which get you to the closer to the 80% reduction. I think the other thing to pull out, which is true in the UK and other countries, we've made very considerable progress now on decarbonising energy production, which means that transport is actually the largest sector for emitting carbon. So it's the one where we now need to make significant progress. So it's kind of a positive sign that transport is now the one where we need to make progress because we've done such a good job on energy production, electricity production. Second thing I think I would say is, interestingly, coming out of the pandemic, particularly on aviation, it demonstrated, having switched it off, and then having come out of the pandemic and it's very rapidly bounced back, there's a very huge demand from people for mobility globally. And I think our job as policymakers is not to tell people they can't travel and can't be mobile, it's to work out a way to do it that is consistent with our net zero obligations. And the final thing I would say just on that is I was in the US last week chairing with Secretary Buttigieg and our Canadian and Singaporean colleagues a Sustainable Aviation Fuel Summit. And what struck me from that was the conversation with the aviation sector, which makes a significant impact here, is it's not really now a conversation about whether to do the things that are necessary to reduce carbon emissions. It's a how question and a how fast question. And there's total commitment by the sector to getting the job done. And I think that's also the sense that I'm picking up from transport minister colleagues from around the world. So I think it's about practical measures, things that we can get delivered, and it's the pace of change. And certainly what a final closing point before we take questions, conversations that we've had with the automotive industry in the UK, having published our zero-emission vehicle mandate and the final consultation just before we legislate, is, I think, setting very clear directions. Our proposals were welcomed both by environmental groups, but also by the industry, giving them a very clear direction of travel. Some are actually going to go faster than the mandate that we've set out. So that gives me the confidence that as they ramp volumes, as they put their own investment into this, we'll see the cost of vehicles fall, and I think that will accelerate the transition, which I think means that I'm more on the optimistic end of the outlook set out, rather than on the more pessimistic outlook. So on that, I think we'll happy to now take questions to the end of the session, either to me or to Young Tai.
Thank you very much, Secretary Harper. Indeed, we have a microphone here for you to ask questions. If you would please state your name and the organization you come from. And maybe we take 2, perhaps 3 at a time. If you have very technical questions, that's what we have Ola for, and the Outlook session is a little later. Here we're more talking the political level. Who would like to kick us off with a question? Please raise your hand. I can see a question at the back. That's Patrick Hatch from The Age in Australia. Aline, if you could, thank you very much.
Secretaries, thank you. I was hoping you could put today's report in the context of the Paris Agreement. If transport emissions only do decrease by 3% by 2050, does that make the Paris ambitions unachievable?
Let me pick that one up first. So if we only do the 3%, yeah, that doesn't get you to where we need to get to for Paris, so we have to be more ambitious than that. So certainly proposals the UK government set out for decarbonising transport are absolutely designed to get us to the 1.5 degree Paris commitments. That's what we're intending to do, and certainly the discussions I had this morning, that was where other governments were planning on getting to as well. So I think the report sets out, if people don't do anything, we're not going to be on track. But I think actually lots of governments have ambitious plans that they're setting out and are starting to deliver on, which do get us to the 1.5 Paris target, which remains our ambition.
Thank you. Other questions? I can see no questions. Are these journalists? I think they are.
Sign of a very good breakfast.
That's very good breakfast and very good explanations. I'll give you a few more seconds, but if not, then we'll... Yes, there's another one from Australia. Go ahead, Patrick.
Secretary, to follow up on your comments from EVs, that's all well and good. Where does mode shift come into things? To what extent do we actually need to get people out of private cars altogether to go on this correct path?
I think certainly from our point of view, it's about giving people choices. Certainly the UK government's policy is not to force people to do mode shift. It's about giving people better choices, and we're absolutely doing that. So we're making sure that we are supporting our bus sector. We put some more money into that sector last week. We are continuing to support buses to move into zero-emission vehicles as well, whether it's electric vehicles or looking at developments with hydrogen as well. And we remain technology neutral to let the sectors do that. But it's about decarbonising, as far as cars are concerned, it's about decarbonising those so that people can use their own private vehicles in a way that are consistent with our net zero obligations. We're not trying to force people out of cars. We're trying to provide choices for people that make sense that they can choose, but we're not trying to enforce modal shift. And actually, I think the example, as I said, the example from the pandemic that stuck with me was we had a discontinuity there that none of us would have liked, which forced people into an environment where they couldn't fly. They were forced, we reduced people's mobility, and actually what that demonstrated was that's not what people want to do. People want to travel, they want to see family, friends, and our job is to work out how we can do it in a net zero way, and actually decarbonising all forms of road transport is how you do that, but also to give people choices. So we want to give people better choices, but we're very much in the carrot approach as opposed to the stick approach.
Thank you. So now that we're warmed up, there's a question here at the center table. If you could please introduce yourself.
Good morning, sirs. I'm RJ of Business World from the Philippines. The report has really ambitious policy recommendations. Coming from the Philippines and Southeast Asia, I'd like to ask, how can all these very ambitious recommendations be realistically applicable to less developed countries like those in Southeast Asia?
That's a very good and relevant question. And recently I traveled to Manila and had a chance to what the situation is like in many Asian developing the cities and countries. And basically we have to understand this. And our Outlook doesn't provide the community with one single solution. And perhaps it contains a bit of optimism for the future. And we try to focus on the analytic information, and at least to prove that if we do more, we can achieve. But we know that all the factors are always changing, and that's why we update every 2 years. But as of today, we provide usually 3 scenarios. So if we maintain the status quo, we can reach this level. But if we do a little bit more, we can reach this level. If we do the maximum, we can reach this level. So perhaps the measures can be used by different government, but we have also one interesting tool in ITF, which is called TCAT, Transport Climate Action Directory. And that's more concrete, the government measures. We have more than 80 the measures government can use. And each measure provides a rough estimation of how much CO2s can be reduced if government uses this tool. And this directory is a living document, which is to be updated step by step also. And I think with combination of different measures, you can roughly estimate. But we also have to understand in a realistic perspective that even though we take cautious steps and relevant steps at the moment, and tomorrow it doesn't change dramatically, we have to wait a bit. If we stop the bad things today, and suddenly tomorrow we will not face heaven or the most optimistic situation. But what is important is that we focus on technological aspect and also behavior changing aspect and building consensus based on the analytic work like this. And then step by step, we can share best practices and information through the platform, which is ITF. And we are going in the direction, and definitely we can help individually and also multilaterally. So I think the meaning of this new outlook, we have to understand with more realistic perspective and a little bit with more patience, but a bit of serious, the perception on this work.
Thank you. We have time for one more round of questions. I can see a question at the back. Yes, that is a colleague from India.
Hello, this is Niharika. I am from Quads, India. So I have a question around the pandemic has derailed the auto sector's growth globally, right? Now, as we sort of moving back to the pre-pandemic levels, do you think the sustainability part is somehow getting ignored? Because we need to get back to those numbers. We need to get back to the growth that has been sort of slowed down by the pandemic-triggered lockdowns around the globe. And you said that we need patience and policies around that. But do you think that is sort of getting ignored, the sustainability part, and more importantly, the just transition?
That's a very good question. And in fact, when I said patient, it means that we have to be more realistic. Now the questions are becoming more complicated because we have more things to consider. So at the beginning, in the past, perhaps we focused on a small number of the variables and factors, but now we have to think about sustainability. Also, we face a fast digitalization, and also gender questions, and social and legal and technological. So I think all things considered, basically we have to have holistic approach. And for a long time, our transport sector has maintained a kind of silo approach. So we try to construct more infrastructure, we try to bring more regulations, but now we have to think about this and that and this and that. But that's why we have to open our door to work more closely with other sectors. And then maybe during this transition period, it takes more time, but in the end, we can get more than we lose. So that's the basic, the strategic, the perspective that we have to have.
If there are no more questions, we would wrap up. But there is one. Let's say absolutely. Let's have one more question, and then we'll, because Secretary Harper has to move on to the ministerial roundtable next door.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Kim. I want to ask you, what's your approach, or what is the perspective for Latin America in general in terms of the things that the countries from Latin America can do to improve their transport system and get to get better for the planet and the transition in different ways? Thank you.
I think we still have very weak representation from that region, Latin America, because among 64 members, we have only 4 countries from Latin America. But ITF is a platform. We are not regulator. The platform meaning that we can exchange ideas and information. But to make it more efficient, we need more diverse perspective and views coming from different experience. Then I think in Latin America, I know that in some countries like Chile, they are focusing on electric bus in the public transport sector. And in Colombia as well, there are good things that we can learn. And then the problem is that, do we have an efficient platform for sharing that kind of information? Because every country has a strong point and weak point, and we have to communicate and interact with each other. So I think that's why I'm trying to focus more on the outreach to Latin American countries, so that we can have more countries working closely with us, and also the same case for the Asian continent. So in the end, step by step, perhaps we can provide you with relevant recommendations. Also, we can learn from your cases. And in the end, maybe the compromised approach can be more efficient, and also we can share a lot of new ideas for the future.
Thank you very much, Secretary Harper. Thank you very much, Secretary General Kim. Thank you all. The gentlemen are moving on to the ministerial roundtable. If you hang on for a few minutes, I'll brief you on speaker changes so you know who to expect. Thank you again, and a very successful day. Can you hold up the Outlook? Marco? Thank you very much. It's just
I'm going to the same roundtable.
Der Presspoint macht den 12 Uhr. Der 12 Uhr vor dem, der ist ein Aufsteller am Presspoint, und da kommen die dann hin und sagen, ja? So, thank you all. Just very quickly, updates on some speaker changes that I received last night. So in the gender session that's actually happening at 11, there is a speaker change. There's one lady, and I'm looking for her name, who has fallen ill, unfortunately. I can't find her. Damn. Okay, there's a speaker change in the gender session. I'll try to dig that up somewhere else. Then in the session on the circular economy at 11, Shuai Ren is unfortunately not able to come, but he's replaced by Jean-Baptiste Burcha from Valeo, who will join the session. And in the session on financing equitable, green and safe transport at 1600 at 4 p.m., Patrick Wendler, who's the CEO of BP Europe and head of the country for Germany, will be replacing Emma Delaney, who's also from BP. But so there you have the CEO of BP Europe. That should not be bad at all. Final change in the session on the new ITF Mobility Innovation Hub, and I could talk about that for a long time because it's interesting. We now have Kunwoo Kim, who's the chief economist of Kakao Mobility, who will be included in that session as well. So that's it. They're all happening. Slight changes, but nothing dramatic. My recommendation, we are now on time to head for the decarbonizing transport session if you want. And at 11, the Outlook session is highly recommended as well. There's a bit of an overlap there, but we'll manage. If you have any questions, just come to me. Thank you.